I'm Milo, and I took the Beyond the States masterclass titled On Your Mark in 2022. It completely changed my trajectory of my education and my future and everything, probably even my life into the far future. So I'll sort of start from the very beginning. I grew up in a big family. My mom was super stressed about how do I send all these kids to school and not break the bank, while also having them have a really awesome education, fly the coop, get out of the house, and grow for themselves. How do I not just send them to the hometown university, hometown community college, that sort of stuff? So as I went through high school, my mom was listening to this podcast called Beyond the States. It was led by Jen Vimont at the time, and my mom loved it. Thinking about what her kids could do if they went to school in Europe was something that she really enjoyed. And so I would be in the car with her and I would hear this podcast, and I'd think to myself, like, yeah, that sounds nice. Like, I could probably do that, but it's just a world away. I'm, a freshman in high school, and I don't have to worry about that now. Also, Europe sounds scary. The United States is fine. I had all these doubts, basically. As I got older through the pandemic, that's when I started to wonder, what would it be like if I lived outside the United States? During that time, actually, my parents got a subscription to the Beyond the States database. Now, at that time, the database for Beyond the States was a database that had just all the public university programs in Europe, and you could sort of browse, and it was pretty rudimentary. It's a lot better now. They got it for like a month or so, and they had all of us kids, I have 7 siblings, by the way, all of us kids go through and pick a couple schools that sounded interesting, a couple majors to look into, and then we ended the subscription and it was sort of that. So I had this list of schools. I was like, okay, if I went to school in Europe, I'd go maybe here. But I didn't know what to do with that list. I had no idea what schools in Europe were like or how to research them. I sort of needed some guidelines. And so I kind of left it in the dust. I was like, sounds cool, but kind of unfeasible. I don't know how to do that. But anyway, it stuck in my mind. And my junior year rolled around. By this time, I was following Beyond the States on Instagram. Christmas break, I saw an ad. The Beyond the States masterclass titled On Your Mark was on sale or something like that. And I was like, okay, maybe I should look into that a little bit. I talked to my mom about it, and we decided, yeah, that's gonna be your Christmas present this year, actually. If I'm looking back, I think that Christmas gift could have been one of the best of all time, actually. I think that making that choice to further pursue or just look into school in Europe by domino effect has completely changed my life. Shout out Beyond the States and shout out my mom. Best Christmas gift ever. I signed up for this masterclass. It's a 6-week course, and it was led by Jen Vimont, at the time the founder of Beyond the States. And it walked us through everything we needed to know about researching schools in Europe. This was everything that I had missed by only, having the database and only having the names of schools. I didn't know anything about schools in Europe, period. Admissions, nope. Student life, nope. Cost of living, nope. I was clueless. And this program really, really helped me because it walked us through it. So I took this class with about a dozen other students that were my age in the States. And it was really awesome to see what their interests were like and what their separate experiences were and why we all wanted to study in Europe. So we started the course off very simple, actually. It was really nice. Considering schools in Europe was a lot different than considering schools in the States. When considering a school in the States, you might think, okay, they have a good program for this, for example, but you don't look into much more. Maybe the weather and the sports teams are and stuff like that. But schools in Europe, it's a lot different. And Jen Vimont walked us through all of that. We started pretty basic. We had an Excel sheet with some European capitals in it, and we basically ranked them. And we did research on, okay, average weather, what do we want? How's the public transportation? How easy is it to get there from the United States? How international is the city? These really basic things that had more to do with, okay, how would you like actually living there versus just being a student there? Because in the States, I feel like we often think it's all the same. I can live in Kansas or I can live in New Hampshire and I'm gonna have the same sort of lifestyle. But there in Europe, here, it's kind of different. And at the end of that, I sort of realized, I want to stay, somewhere where it's a little bit colder. I want some place that's pretty cheap. I don't want to spend a lot on tuition. So that sort of led me to Central Europe. I had a lot of schools in Poland that I was looking at, and in Czech Republic, Romania even. And another cool thing about the course is that we saw a lot of maps, and like there is this map that showed us the admissions requirements for all of these nations. And some are like, okay, you have to have 3 or more AP scores of 3 or higher. Some other ones were like, okay, you have to have this high of an ACT score. And that was super helpful. It showed us how those nations think about education. Educational society is a lot different than in the States. And then we also talked about just student life in general. What is it like to be a student there? And I remember one week we were talking about admissions and settling and living in a place. And Jen shared with us that at one school, during the first week, all the students that are incoming go on a pub crawl. And all of us high schoolers were like, what? Like a pub crawl during intro week? That's crazy. And then she even dropped another bomb. She was like, yeah, and then the professors join them at the pubs too. We were like, what? That's crazy. She said that to show us there's a lot of things that are different. You can really easily live a pseudo-American lifestyle in Europe, but there's going to be a lot of changes as well, and some of them are really surprising, some of them are hilarious, and that really just got us ready to explore more and be open to what the European lifestyle is like. Another huge plus of the class was the communication availability. Every week we got to meet on a call, all of us, ask questions, discuss where we're at, and then also just go over the work that we had done. And we were slowly honing in on just a couple schools that we wanted to apply to once the class was over. And so when this masterclass ended, I had a list of about 10 schools that I really wanted to apply to. I had gone through all their websites, I knew how to do research, I knew what their curriculum was, all of these things that I wouldn't have been able to do by myself, just with the list that I had gotten from my parents. And I knew when the application dates were. They were during the next summer, after senior year. And so I got to spend my senior year doing the things that I loved and not stressing out. So I did. All my friends were stressing over essays and college admissions and which schools to go to, all these things. They were writing all these essays. And I remember just thinking, these essays are so phony. I applied to a couple schools and I had to write them as well, and I just hated it. I was so glad that I did not really have to depend on these essays to get into school. So after this whole process, I sent the list of schools in Europe to my dad, and we talked about it a little bit, and he said, well, Milo, maybe you should look at a bigger city. A lot of the schools I had looked at were medium-sized cities, but maybe not a big international population. So then, with my new skills about how to research and study schools in Europe, me and my dad went back at it, and we looked at some private schools. And I had all the skills from the masterclass that allowed me to research that school, know it was right for me, and then eventually apply. And I still had the other schools on my list, but I ended up accepting my admission into the Architectural Institute in Prague, and here I am. And it's all because of the On Your Mark masterclass at Beyond the States. Without it, I would not really be here, I would not have the skills I have, and I wouldn't have the future that I have waiting in front of me now. I just checked back on a couple of the other students that were also in the master's class, and they've also gone and studied in Europe, and we all have our own lives now that seem happy and joyful, at least for them. I know I'm having a good time, and it's just really amazing. So a thank you to Beyond the States. That's it. Thanks. Bye.